because, you know, I was that kid that watched climbing comps and saw thin athletes and got disordered eating. Yeah, but you look at athletes' faces out on the mat and tell me how often you think they're having fun.
Did you ever lie about that?
I guess it's like outdoor climbing. You know, I climbed a V14 the other day and no one cared at all.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, thanks guys. People saying they were going to call they called child services on me, and that I was going to be a bad mom, and I already was, because I was risking my daughter's life. And guys that have kids are like, oh, you're going to have another one. And you bounced back so quick last time. And I'm like, fuck you, I did not bounce back.
Yeah.
Like, I grinded away and I pushed so hard and it wasn't easy.
Welcome to another episode of the That's Not Real Climbing podcast. I'm your host, Jenny, and I'm excited to introduce my guest for today, Shauna Coxsey. You all probably know who she is, but just in case, she's a British climber, 2-time Bouldering World Cup season winner, Olympian, mom, and nowadays she's still ticking off hard climbs outdoors. In this episode, we'll learn about how not excited she was to compete in the Olympics, why she has an issue with the word retirement, and of course, the difficulty of managing climbing during and after pregnancy, both socially and physically. Thank you so much to Mad Rock for setting up this interview at their HQ. Just a reminder that you can use the code NOTREALCLIMBER for 10% off your Mad Rock order. And I hope you enjoy this episode with Shauna. Real quick, I'm excited to announce my new sponsor helping make this podcast episode possible, Mad Rock Climbing. I got fitted with their brand new line of high-performance shoes, the D2.1s. They just came out December 6th, but you might notice a few of your favorite comp climbers are already wearing them, like Oscar Beaudrand from Team Canada, and also me. This is the first time I've gotten to wear their shoes for an extended period of time, and I'm actually super impressed with the grip of their in-house rubber. And of course, the famous drone heel that everyone says is the cheat code to heel hooking small edges. Feel free to message me if you have any questions about the shoes or sizing, and you can use the discount code NOTREALCLIMBER for 10% off your entire Mad Rock order. Info will be in the description. Back to the show.
But okay, how are you doing today? How are the clinics?
Yeah, they were good fun, actually.
Yeah.
They were like a really young group initially, and then slightly older for the second group, but still all like youth squad team kind of scenes, which I didn't prepare for. So kind of.
So what was different about it? How did that like throw a wrench in your plans?
It just means that the pace needs to change, and so in my sessions, I really like to focus on mindfulness and kind of body connection with the brain and what the body's doing. Whereas you have to shape that very differently for young people than you would for adults, I think.
I wish I could have been there. I wanted to take one,
but
they ran out of spots.
Oh yeah, they sold out super quick actually. I didn't even get a chance to promote them.
Yeah, I'm so interested that it was all like youth climbers. But yeah, the youth climbers here are crazy.
Yeah,
so they're so strong.
Realized that
It's very scary.
Impressive. It's very different to back home.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, because like as just kind of like a more recreational comp climber, it's very hard to just like beat any of the kids.
Yeah.
And that's like, it's sad, but my goal is to just like beat children.
I feel like that's my goal these days.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
Exactly.
They were like, are you going to try the hardest climbs in the gym? I was like, dude, I'd have to warm up for like 3 hours to try that climb. Like, no, I'm good.
I know.
Like, we want to watch you on it. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So like, of course, like the people taking the clinics learn a lot from them. But as the instructor, is there anything you learned from like teaching these clinics?
Yeah, I learned so much from the athletes that come in the clinics or the people that come in the clinics. And I think it's, you know, I'm someone that's really inspired by the people around me. And I think so much of what I learn from the people on the clinics is about the mental side and the approach and the inquisitive nature. I love it when I get asked a question that I have to stop and really think about the answer to.
Yeah.
And I think when it's a lot of young climbers, what I learn mostly is about the sense of where the sport's at. And I've done a few different things here in LA and elsewhere with younger climbers, and I'm realizing that so much more we need to focus on the mental side of climbing. And the most frequently asked question I get is how did I deal with nerves as a professional climber? or as a professional comp athlete. Like that's still the case somewhat on rock, but it's so much more exposed.
Yeah.
And it's so much more intense in competition climbing, right? So, yeah, that's probably my most frequently asked question from these clinics and elsewhere too.
Yeah, you seem like one of the competitors who was like better at dealing with your nerves. I don't remember where I heard this, but someone was talking about how maybe it was just like you and Matt Groom talking about how people like run out onto the mats instead of like staying calm and you can just walk out.
Yeah.
So I guess you kind of give off that like vibe of being more chill during comps.
Yeah, and I think it's something I tried pretty hard to embody is being present and being calm. I perform best when I'm calm and not agitated. Also, like running out onto the mats when it's super hot, especially at some comps are at altitude, you know, like it's kind of exhausting. You're either the boulder or flustered, and I don't know, to spend an extra 5 seconds walking to the boulder and feeling calm and controlled, for me made a huge difference than if I ran out there. But that's a personal choice, as everything is, and especially comp climbing, everyone kind of has or tries to weave their own version of what is most conducive to a successful performance, right?
Yeah. So how is your like method for staying calm during a comp?
Staying calm?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is the question I've been asked the most, so I'm very well versed in answering it.
Yeah.
But no, what I have talked a lot about recently, and what I would say to anyone struggling with nerves in competition, is that nerves are not something to be afraid of, right? Nerves are a good thing. They mean you are excited to be there. They mean you have a lot of emotion around that event. There's also the fact that we can't change our emotions. We can't change how we feel in any given moment. We can't just choose to feel differently. So understanding that we feel nervous and figuring out what that looks like is super important. And we can make choices to feel differently in the future. We can focus on our breathing or kind of do mindfulness practice or whatever it might be to help you change how you're feeling. But in that moment, you can't make nerves go away. It's not possible. So for me, it looked like owning them, you know, like kind of realizing that A, they were a good thing, and B, they weren't anything to fear. And then I'd use different breathing techniques. So at times I've used box breathing, you know, like 4 seconds in, hold for 4, 4 seconds out, hold for 4, you know?
Yeah.
So I use that even still today, you know, if I'm struggling to sleep or if my toddler is testing my patience. So box breathing for me is something that I use as a tool regularly and did so. So therefore in competition, if I was feeling anxious, I could use that as a tool. And then I would very much use mindfulness as well. So kind of setting intentions of what I wanted to do in that session. And I'd use that to come back to like where I was if I did feel nervous. And then I would literally force myself to smile, to walk out on the mat smiling.
One of those things, yeah.
Which is scientifically proven to make you feel better.
Yeah.
So for me, smiling and being present and happy to be in that space, to be in the space that I've worked really hard to get to, helped me deal with nerves. So kind of accepting where they are, trying to control my breathing and my state, and then smiling.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
for
a
sharing
little
that.
process.
I hope it helps people.
Delve straight into that.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Yeah,
hopefully
great.
it helps. It seems like a question you get a lot.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I get it a lot. And I didn't struggle with nerves at comps towards the end. But the one thing I will say is that you cannot train experience.
Yeah.
So you can train comp simulations, you can do as many boulders as you want, or ropes, or speed runs, but you can't train being out in front of a crowd on the mats
Yeah.
performing. So the more you do it, the easier it gets.
Yeah. I mean, you said that you didn't feel as nervous anymore at the end. Was that because maybe you like didn't care as much anymore, or did you still?
I think I would say the only competition I ever went into not to compete that I didn't care as much would be the Olympics. And there's a whole story behind that.
Do you want to get into that real quick?
We can, yeah. And that, so going into the Olympic qualification, so the World Championships in 2019, I felt pretty good, but my entire team around me was fairly convinced that I wasn't going to qualify at that event.
Okay.
We didn't even talk about the fact that I might qualify. It didn't feel like a possibility. And I think, so Tokyo feels like so long ago now.
Yeah.
Because it kind of was.
A little.
But we just didn't know where anyone sat in terms of a 3-discipline sport because they didn't exist previously, you know, that 3-discipline element. Yeah. So I'd done some training and my speed time wasn't incredible compared to some of the other athletes. I mean, it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great.
Okay.
And we had no idea where my lead climbing was at because I hadn't done many comps.
Yeah.
And the hardest thing to train was bouldering. So,
Really?
yeah, because you went from having all your time to be the best in the world or the best you could be at the thing you love most. And that was me trying to be one of the best in the world to a third of your time, trying to be better than you've ever been.
Yeah.
Which I fell so out of love with bouldering in the start of the Olympic training process. It was like super heartbreaking and one of the things I had to work really hard to get back. Yeah. So yeah, going into Hachioji World Championships, we had no idea. So I walked away from that event with a bronze medal and was like pretty psyched, obviously, unexpected, and was like, okay, the Olympics is a year away. Let's train and push for that. I picked up a couple of injuries, but they were manageable. And then the whole COVID delay just had such a negative impact for me personally on my training, on my injuries, not being able to have access to physios and the usual routine. And I'm someone who thrives off my environment. I like to work with people and train with people, and then that was all stripped away. So as one of the older athletes as well that qualified, an extra year felt hard as opposed to exciting. And for the younger athletes, you know, an extra year of training was super significant. It was huge.
How old were you at the time?
27, 27?
Okay.
Yeah, I think.
Gotcha.
Gosh, I should know the answer to that.
I guess if you didn't care about that time, then.
No, I mean, I did really care. You know, going to Hachioji and then 2020.
Yeah.
But then by the time 2021 came around, it felt like get to the games. That was the goal ultimately, because my body was really struggling.
Yeah.
I knew I needed surgeries. I knew I needed kind of a lot of time away. And I'd had a knee surgery that had an epidural that went wrong. So I therefore carried a back injury because of that. I still do.
Epidural for a knee injury?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was a thing at all.
It wasn't. So it was during COVID. The anaesthetists didn't want to do general, despite my asking for it. It's a long story. But yeah, so they missed my epidural space when they did the epidural and punctured my spinal cord fluid. So the dura fluid leaked out. So yeah, I still have a back injury from that, which was really aggravated by speed. So basically in 2019, I was psyched, and then mid 2020 kind of got screwed over by a bad epidural. Gosh, yeah, so 2020 Olympics, so in 2021, it was like, cool, let's limp to the finish line. We get there and try and become an Olympian. Yeah. Actually complete this chapter.
You didn't do bad.
No, in hindsight, I was like, shit, I probably should have tried a bit harder and like been more like in the zone for this, but it was so hard. And it's the first time in my career where I felt like I couldn't get into the space of like fighting to compete. And I also knew it was my last ever event. I knew that it was like the end of my career and I was ready for it, but it felt kind of drawn out, you know, towards the end. It was like, are we going to make it or not? Like, are we going to get there? And there've been so much hype towards it. And I also wanted babies. I was like, I really want to have a baby. So the extra year for me was not ideal.
Okay. And so that was your very last event?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, someone asked me earlier, when did I last go on the speed route? And I was like, in Tokyo at the Olympics.
You haven't touched it since?
No.
Oh, I think the speed climbers were really sad to hear that.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like they deserve their own set of medals and they deserve their own discipline. I'm not sure speed climbers will be sad to hear that because they have their own sport, you know, and I respect that. And I loved training it actually. But yeah, I mean, I got pregnant not long after getting back from Tokyo. And also it's the worst thing for my back. So
yeah. Makes sense. Okay, so we will get into your, I guess, quitting the competition scene in a bit. But I guess first, for those who don't know, how did you get into climbing and competing in the first place?
Yeah, so I started climbing when I was 4. I saw it on the TV. My dad was a trials bike rider. So we used to watch like the trials riding on the adventure sports programs on the TV. And then after one, climbing came on one day, and it was Catherine Destavel, who is a French female climber, and she was soloing cliffs in Africa, in Mali. And I just fell in love, and I was like, Dad, that's what I want to do. I want to do that. I want to climb. We found a local gym a little while later. So no one in my family climbed. I've brought in a couple of people, some of my nephews since. But yeah, I started at 4 and then started competing at 7 just because there was a comp on at my local gym, which I did. And I think I came like 3rd because there were 3 people in it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Still counts for something.
Yeah, I mean, I got a medal. I got the medal.
Yeah.
And I qualified for the national final. So I went to the national final because there were only 3 again. But yeah, I went to the national final. And there's actually footage of me climbing and I'm crying my eyes out. I seem to hate it.
Oh.
But I remember distinctly watching the oldest female category in the youth having this climb off, and they were on this super steep wall. And it was these like 3 incredible climbers all having this climb off one after the other. And I was like, I want to do that. So I've seen like the footage of me being upset and I kind of remember it, but I remember way more this like climb off from these really strong girls. And I'm pretty sure it was Leah Crane, who is my coach that came to the games with me. And then Hazel Finley and Katie Whittaker. So like 3 kind of legends in the British scene for sure.
Yeah. And so since then, were you more inspired by the comp scene or also just like outdoors?
I don't think I've ever really been inspired by kind of the elite of the sport, mainly because it felt quite disconnected for me, because in terms of where I was at and what I was doing, there wasn't so much like kind of press around the competition scene in my sphere where I grew up climbing. And then there were so few women in the sport doing inspiring things at the time that were promoted. I'm sure there were, but we didn't find out about them. So I felt quite disconnected from the elite world of the sport. But I think I've always been someone who's more inspired by the people surrounding me doing amazing things. You know, like my sister worked full time and did a law degree part time whilst raising me. And I'm like, that is badass and inspiring. Like, that is super hardcore. But as well, you know, you go to the climbing gym and you see someone send their first V3 that they've been working a few sessions towards. Or like someone getting their first pull up and they're trying super hard and they do it. That's inspiration for me. That's something that I can feel and I appreciate. Whereas I feel quite detached, and I think I did as a younger person, from kind of the elites of the world.
And I guess looking back on your time in Team GB when you're actually competing, I don't know how involved you are with GB anymore.
I'm not involved at all with GB.
Okay.
Yeah.
You might not know the answer for this.
Okay.
How do you feel like the team has progressed since you left?
I think, well, I mean, we can look in terms of numbers. You know, I was the only British athlete to go to Paris, not Paris, getting confused. I was the only British athlete to go to Tokyo. And then we had 4 Olympians in Paris. So we obviously saw Toby take the gold, and then Hamish and Erin both make finals, and Molly was there too. So to have 4 athletes going to Paris, I think, is an incredible achievement. I think there has been significant progress in terms of representation of British athlete in the elite, so in finals and winning medals and being successful. But I definitely don't think the support has improved for the athletes, and I think it's really sad actually to see where the sport is right now, to see the success that the athletes are having and to see how under-supported they are. And I think that there's been more funding come in, and I'd love to see it go to the athletes and actually make a difference for them. I know there's athletes who qualified for the Olympics who won't even have all their comp registrations paid this year.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Like in GB or just in general? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty rough.
It's sad. It's really sad. Let alone flights or accommodation or funding for training. We're going backwards. It's so unfortunate. But I don't know enough detail on the whys.
Okay. Yeah, funding is always a huge issue with anybody in the comp scene, I think. I guess sort of on the lines of funding, you mentioned to me that you felt like you'd gotten really lucky with your timing as an athlete, growing along with social media. I guess what exactly do you mean by that?
So my growth as a professional athlete kind of coincided with our sport growing at a significant rate. And I think also coincided with social media, kind of the birth and growth of Instagram and that becoming relevant. So those three things for me kind of created the perfect storm in some ways for me to be able to build a platform and to work with brands and be successful. Yes, it was a lot of work. It didn't just happen by accident. I pour a lot of effort and energy into my social presence and how I interact with the media and the work that I do and everything I do outside of being on the wall. But I do think I was lucky. I do think it's a different game to play if you're coming into the world now, because you're stepping into a sport that is Olympic, that has very distinct pathways in place in some countries and others less so. You know, you can't just rock up to US nationals and have a go. You have to qualify to get there. You have to go through a whole process, as I've been learning from the youth here recently. You know, like it's a very distinct, drawn out process just to get to nationals, let alone to get to internationals. And then you've got the whole contention of social media and how to perform in that world. You know, as a professional athlete, there's kind of two ways to make money and have a successful career. Is to be really good and be at the very, very top, or to be marketable and work with brands and be very good at the marketing side. And you can marry those worlds and do pretty well. You can do even better if you're doing that in the States. It's a whole different game. Oh gosh, yeah. It's very much different in Europe. The funding's a lot less. But yeah, I think now to exist in either of those worlds is a lot more challenging, or to build up to having a strong presence in the comp scene at the elite is more difficult in terms of the process to get there, let alone the actual then performing, as it is on social media too.
Also, I just want to say in terms of like the US funding, or I guess in terms of like, advertising funding.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the athletes here don't get funding. Well, I guess GP doesn't either.
Yeah.
But there are some countries that do get like funding for their athletes.
Yeah, of course. That's a great point, and worth mentioning. I'm talking in terms of sponsorship mainly. On that side of thing, the marketing side. I think there's generally a lot more budget from companies in the US than there is in Europe. In terms of marketing budget. But yeah, there are countries in Europe that are fully funded. There are countries like across the world, federations that pay their athletes to be athletes, or they might be part of the military in that country or the police. And then that will mean they get funded as an athlete to do that full time. So there's a lot of different ways in which it works in different countries. But yeah, in the States, I know it's only the very top few who are funded. And in the UK, I don't even know if it's the top few anymore.
Yeah, I guess it doesn't seem like that. But yeah, we know how to do capitalism. That's the moral of the story. So do you think if you started as an athlete right now, you would find it really daunting to get into the whole like marketing space?
It's such a hard question to answer because, you know, with hindsight, it's impossible to imagine what I might have thought. I think ultimately I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a professional climber, and I knew exactly what my goals were, not how to achieve them. And I forged a path for myself. And I've said before that it wasn't a case of trying to open doors for myself. We were building the doors to open because they just didn't exist. You know, there hadn't been a professional comp climber from the UK before me. We'd had some success in comps way back and the odd medal here and there. But for me, my goal was to train like an athlete, become an athlete in the climbing world. And that felt quite new. But I think I was very driven and really understood my goals. So I think coming in now, I think, yes, I'd find it daunting just as I did back then.
Right, yeah.
But I think I'd be quite driven to know exactly the path I wanted to go down. But that's just because I'm quite a goal-driven person.
Yeah. Any like social media tips to current athletes out there?
Oh my gosh, social media tips. Whew, that's a big question. You just slid that right in there. I feel like we could do a whole podcast on social media tips, and I don't think I'm the right person to ask. I think the social media, you know, people try to master it, and I think that that's an impossible task. I think ultimately, if you're able to be yourself, that's the best way to go about things. But I think it's almost a game, you know, that you're having to play, and deciding how you want to play that game is really important. I don't think that you have to like be the next influencer and do it a specific style. I think you can be authentic to yourself now. But posting consistently and trying to allow negativity to pass without giving you too much emotional distress, because it's impossible to exist on social media without encountering negativity. And I find that really sad, and I hate that that's a part of my job, and a part of, you know, younger athletes are going to face that too. But it's kind of an unfortunate circumstance of the world we're living in, it feels like.
Yeah, there's a lot of negativity online. I mean, that kind of like drives clicks as well. So
Exactly, yeah.
I guess that is kind of just how it works. But I guess I was kind of wondering, sort of like transitioning to the Athletes Commission thing, because I guess I kind of had this thought that maybe, I don't know if this is true, but like as part of Athletes Commission, maybe one thing that you guys work on is also come up with workshops for athletes so that they know how to like manage their life after the sport.
For sure.
I was wondering if that's something you guys do.
It's something that some national federations do, and some national federations do it really well. A lot of national Olympic committees will do it, so NOCs. And it's really interesting because with the International Federation, it obviously sits at the top, and then you have the national federations below that, and then kind of the athletes come through the national federations. So understanding where responsibility lies is often quite confusing. And I do think it's something, well, it is something that's come up at the Athlete Commission, and some of the commission members have wanted to run sessions on marketing and strategies and life after, what comes after pro athlete life. There are a few systems in place within the IFSC to help educate on judging and route setting and whatnot. So there's the ball's starting to roll there, and I think it is definitely something that national federations need to do more as well, because obviously it's relevant to where you are in the world as well, and culturally what that looks like, it will be different at times. But I would love to see more professional athletes involved, not just in the coaching side, which I think is a really natural fit for most people to say, oh, that makes sense to bring athletes through into coaching. Although we don't see it as much as I would expect or would hope.
Different skill sets, kind of.
Yeah, they are, but I do think that there's an element of having someone on your team as a national federation that's been there and done it is invaluable. You know, as much as you're a coach, I do not think you need to be a professional climber or have been to the Olympics to be a good coach. But I'm just saying the experience of having been out on those mats is invaluable. Like you can't say you know what that feels like, or you know how to coach that environment entirely without the experience, I don't think, and without that shared experience. You know, I think what we learn and what athletes learn out on that mat is very useful for coaches to absorb as well. It's not a one-way relationship. I think that coaches can learn a lot from athletes too. So my main task as the chair of the Athlete Commission has been to have an athlete representative sit on every single commission within the IFSC. Because what I found when I came on board initially was there would be a topic or a question around something that was changing, and all this work would be done, and then the Athlete Commission would be told that it was happening and often have some questions or some discourse. And then it would be like, well, it's too late, all this work's been done, this is what's happening, we're just letting you know, or like, yeah, we can take that on board a little bit, maybe we can change it. So I want the athletes to be involved in those conversations from the very start, and to have input and constantly remind everyone around that the sport only exists if the athletes are performing on the stage, you know, like that is what the sport is.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's been my main push and my main focus is to get that voice within every commission. But I think it'd be so cool to have athletes sat on the board, not as athlete representative, as president, vice president, as like continent representatives, to have more voices in those spaces. So yeah, the kind of career element really comes into play there.
Yeah, and backtracking real quick for anyone who's like not super familiar with Athletes Commission does, can you give like a brief overview of that? And I guess also like what are some of like the main top of mind issues right now that you guys are tackling?
So the International Federation of Sport Climbing is the body for all of sport climbing, and that sits as its own entity, and then the national federations are kind of part of the International Federation. So the International Federation has an athlete commission where 2 members of that commission, so the chair and vice chair, sit on the executive board. So that's 2 of 11 spots, which we have full voting rights as well, I will say. So although I think climbing has a lot of improvements to make still, I really am proud of the fact that our federation has 2 athletes with voting rights on the executive board. That's not very common in sport at all. So we have gender equality on that as well. So it's 1 male and 1 female. And the Athlete Commission is responsible for being the voice between the International Federation and the athletes. And there's a lot of work that's done on every single sphere that you can imagine in terms of topics that have been most relevant. I think the one that comes up most frequently and the one that we're incredibly passionate about as a commission and as a sport is athlete health and well-being. So there's a lot of work been done on Red S testing, and climbing is actually the first sport to bring in any form of Red S testing.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Other sports have tried, and this is the first any Red S testing that actually has a repercussion. So
Oh, wow.
in a certain circumstance, an athlete could be removed from competition.
Yeah.
That's a whole other topic that, again, we could probably do an entire podcast on to explain, but there's been a lot of push and voice from the athletes to get this to where it is. And yes, it's not perfect, and it is in a phase where it's coming into the sport and there's a lot more work to be done. But I'd say that's kind of the topic that's reoccurring. And then there's a lot of discussion on route setting, always, of course, and calendars. And a big, huge one has been the Olympics, the disciplines and the medals that we'll have. So we'll find out in April what the number of medals is and how many athletes. And then also the Paralympics too. So the Athlete Commission have been really supportive of the Paralympic kind of climbing bid, but that has all been solely the para climbing committee who fronted that work and the athlete representatives on the para climbing committee there. So yeah, they work tirelessly to make the bid for the LA Paralympics, which we'll find out in December if that's accepted. So we're definitely in, it's just how it will look. So how many?
I was gonna say, I thought
how many classifications? I'm not trying to scare you there. They are in. It's the classifications and how that's all going to look, and what numbers. So they've worked super hard on that, and then we're trying to make it as cohesive as possible and figure out the best way for the paraclimbing committee to work best with the athlete commission to feed back to the executive board. But yeah, I'd say our biggest challenge is always communicating with the athletes. So one of my big goals, aside from getting athletes on every commission, is to have every national federation have an athlete representative.
Okay.
In an ideal world, you'd have every national federation have an athlete on their board, which doesn't seem like a big ask if the International Federation has 2.
Yeah.
But some of our federations are covering multiple different sports, so snow sports or mountaineering, outdoor climbing. So yeah, even getting one athlete name, like a representative, is tricky at times.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, there's a lot of spinning plates.
Yeah, there was a lot of, I guess, issues you had mentioned as well, in terms of like Red S2. One of the audience questions that had come in was, does it feel like you're actually moving the needle with this, or is it like more so just like a lot of frustration or like deadlocks?
No, it does feel like, I mean, there's change that has happened, right? So it is moving. My question that I posed publicly and to the International Federation, to the Medical Commission, is that if we're saying we're testing and we're looking at whether or not athletes are healthy or not, and we are saying our testing has come in, it works well, are we saying everyone that goes out and competes is healthy and that is the image we are happy to portray for our sport? Or are we saying our testing doesn't work? Because right now it's the former. So we're saying we're testing and this works and this is great. But there's obviously a reason we've brought this testing in. So my fear is that we could be causing more damage by saying everyone's healthy, everyone's fine, when it might not look that way to the outside community. But ultimately the testing, they can only pull someone out of competition if they are at risk in that very moment when they do that test. And I think it's like a fatal risk in that moment. So there's a lot of nuance to the way the testing works. And I think there's a lot better communication that needs to happen so that we can all understand what the testing is and how it works. Because, you know, I was that kid that watched climbing comps and saw thin athletes and got disordered eating because of watching comp athletes.
Really?
Like I was literally that kid. So it's not...
I didn't know about that part.
Oh, yeah, I haven't talked about it much publicly, and I think I will at some point. But it's been very relevant in these topics, in this topic, because when we talk about protecting the athletes and the well-being of the athletes that are on that platform, on that stage, that's so important, and that's why this work is being done. But it stems so much further than that. It stems to the little kid watching, or every single individual that's watching. You know, we're inspiring not just a generation, but an entire community of climbers all around the world. So yeah, I think we are making steps, and the Medical Commission has had some changes recently. And I think that there's some incredibly passionate, caring individuals that are working so hard. And I just hope it keeps improving, because I think there's always going to be teething pains, right, when things come in and it's new. So yeah, my role is up in September for the International Federation athlete chair role. So hand the reins over to the next person to continue this work on.
You're not going to do it again?
No, I'm not going to do it again. No, I feel ready to pass that baton.
Okay. And I guess going back to, I mean, when you were saying that you also kind of went into that eating disorder route, if you're comfortable.
Yeah, it's fine.
Were you like aware that that was, I guess, happening? Because I think some people don't even realize that they're like...
Yeah, no, I looked at who was... So when I was a teenager and I wanted to be a pro climber, I looked at who was at the top. They looked a certain way, and that's what I thought was needed to be successful. Like, I would print pictures out of skinny climbers and stick them on my mirror to be like, right, I don't want to eat. And I would try hard not to eat. Like, I was very aware of what I was doing. And then I broke my leg because my bone density was low.
Wow.
So I was significantly damaging my health at this point. And then I started working with a coach and a nutritionist, and they helped me build back up. Yeah, so I think if I hadn't have been lucky enough to break my leg, the irony, then I could have gone down a damaging path. And I'd say I had struggles with disordered eating over like having an eating disorder. I don't think I actually was, I don't think I was unlucky. I think I was lucky to meet the right people at the right time to pull me out of it and not go too far. But it's something that I still struggle with today. Like, I still have to be very conscious about it, and I still have kind of trauma from that. And that is because of what image our sport was promoting at that time.
Yeah. And I guess I've heard stories that even like amongst athletes, it would just be like a normal thing to talk about, like how little you're eating. And is that like, did you feel like that was the case for you at the time?
Yeah, for sure. We are in a power to weight sport.
Yeah.
And I think that weight isn't a topic we're going to get away from. So it's the narrative around that. And I think we need to shift the narrative from weight to health. And And I think even still now, you know, like if I speak to athletes, there's pride in saying how light you are. And it,
Really?
yeah, it's hard. Yeah.
Okay.
But also there's a lot of fear around saying your weight if you find it too heavy.
Yeah.
And I was one of the heavier climbers on the World Cup circuit, and my husband's a heavier climber, you know? So we're very familiar with becoming comfortable with that. But even the fact that I'm sat here saying we're heavier climbers, you know, that's kind of part of the damaging narrative that that's creating, because we're not super heavy people, right? But we are in like the pro climber scene. And I don't know how we get away from that narrative because of being in a power to weight sport. But I do wish for a healthier world that our sport exists in. Yeah, it's kind of scary, I think.
Well, I would say, like, from an outsider's perspective, like someone who's not involved in the elite parts of climbing, I don't feel like, I feel like the narrative is kind of changing.
It
I
does
think
feel
just
like
from,
that,
like,
shifting.
Yeah, hearing about it on social media and stuff, people are kind of more aware about what they're saying, careful about what they're saying in terms of, like, weight. So I think it's okay.
Yeah, no, I think it's good. And I remember being stood on a World Cup podium, and it was me, Miho and Yanya, and we all had biceps. We were all like stacked.
Yeah.
And I looked at those girls and I was like, this is the healthiest podium I've seen in a World Cup in terms of the image presented to the outside world. And I'm not saying anyone who looks skinny isn't healthy, not by any means. We don't know anyone's backstory. We don't know what their natural body form is. We can sit back and question everything, and it's easy to, like, you know, the keyboard warriors who love to comment on, especially women's weight, you know. I find that hard. But yeah, I'm also guilty of it, because when I saw it was me, Miho and Yanya, and I was like, this is inspiring, this is cool. Like all those little girls that are in the front row of this competition, see 3 healthy looking athletes. Like that, for me, was a really cool moment in the sport, especially where I'd come from and what I'd seen in my time in like the pro comp circuit, to be like, this is changing, like this is impressive. But yeah, I hope that continues to kind of get better in the future.
Yeah, and I definitely, I think I resonate with what you're saying about just like the keyboard warriors too.
Oh gosh.
It's just, it's not great to comment on anyone, even if you're like concerned, because people, I don't know, naturally settle at any kind of weight. So you don't necessarily know just from looking if they're healthy or not.
Yeah.
So yeah, that can be pretty damaging as well.
Yeah. I mean, there's a whole host of nuance to the testing that goes on as well. So I think although it can kind of look like the International Federation saying everyone's healthy if they're competing, that's not actually the case necessarily, because there will, if an athlete shows up in a certain zone, then the National Federation will be notified, and then ultimately the responsibility for the athlete's well-being falls to the National Federation. But that's not to say that isn't happening. We just aren't privy to that information, like as the public. So yeah, there could be athletes who are under concern, but you won't find that information out. And you shouldn't, right? Like that is, they're
private.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing your story. I know that can be like kind of difficult sometimes.
That's okay.
So switching gears here a bit into, I guess, dare I say the word retirement?
Yeah, we talked about this.
Please excuse this brief intermission, but if you're interested in deleted scenes from this episode where we talk about her experience commentating at the Paris Olympics and strengthening her climbing through pelvic floor exercises, do consider helping support this podcast on Patreon. Some of the perks include a membership pin shipped to you after 2 months, prioritized guest questions, or the ability to submit video questions, and more to come. The proceeds go back into the podcast to help me break even, and they help me improve the experience of the guests. If you'd like to help out non-monetarily, liking, commenting, and sharing helps a great deal as well. Back to the show.
Yeah, what is it like transitioning from comp climbing to rock? And I guess what's your issue with retirement?
Yeah, the word retirement saying I retired is my biggest regret in my career. And that's not to say you shouldn't use it. It's just because I said I retired. So then everyone assumed I was done with climbing. I wasn't going to be elite. And then because I had a baby during that time too, I was literally like written off as an elite climber in a lot of spheres, I think, or especially outside of the climbing community. And because when I was coming back from having my baby and wanting to transition to becoming a rock climber, there was a lot of change going on. So I was kind of battling a lot of other things. And I think people genuinely assumed I was like done with climbing outside of the sport.
Okay.
And that's, I think, partly because we've become Olympic. So in a lot of traditional Olympic sports, your sport is your job, you retire and then you never do that again.
Really?
In a lot of sports, yeah, as I've learned. You know, like if you think, I know Jess Ennis, who's a heptathlete. She's an Olympian, a British Olympian, won multiple medals. She doesn't go and do the heptathlon every weekend, right?
I mean, that's a bit different. It's like a conglomeration, but I feel like
it is. But so I was chatting to a track cyclist when I was in Paris. I was on the studio show for Eurosport, and we were sat chatting. We had the Eiffel Tower twinkling in the background. We were all glammed up. And she was like, oh, so what do you do now? Is this what you do, commentating? And I was like, no, I'm a pro climber. And she was like, yeah, you used to be, but what do you do now? And I was like, no, I'm a professional rock climber. And she's like, sorry, what? I was like, what do you mean, what? And she's like, well, how does that work? I climb rocks. And honestly, when I said it out loud, I was like, yeah, how does that work? I climb rocks. Sounds very strange. But she couldn't fathom that I could continue my professional career within the sport outside of competition. She genuinely couldn't grasp it. The more I explained it, the less sense it made to her. And she's a ex-professional athlete too, you know?
I guess that does.
So I've come across that kind of resistance quite a lot in that world, outside of the sport. So that's my issue with the word retirement. Transition is a great word from comp athlete to rock climber with the hiatus of having a baby. But yeah, it feels like a different sport.
Yeah. Any like difficulties there going from?
Yeah, I had a baby.
Okay, yeah, that's true. We'll get into that.
Yeah, I think I get asked a lot, like, how different is comp climbing to rock climbing and what the transition was like. But because I had pregnancy, postpartum, recovery in the middle of that phase, and I did that kind of during the Olympic dip that everybody goes through, and especially with Tokyo, because it was climbing's first time. Everyone was a first-time Olympian. No one was ready for the circus and wildness that comes with going to the games. I think everyone struggled. Literally everyone I know that went to Tokyo and I spoke to afterwards struggled, whether they were there as a coach or a physio, or if they won gold or came 20th, you know, like everyone had some sort of dip after.
Just like the crash from.
Yeah. It's
the adrenaline.
so intense. And the build up with then the delay. And the whole surrounding of, will it happen? Won't it happen? Will you test positive for COVID and not get to go, or won't you? You know, you sat in the airport when you got there and did this COVID test, and you just sat in a conference room with a mask on, waiting for someone to come and give you a little positive or negative card. It's like, are you going to get turned around on the flight? Go straight home? This seems like some weird sci-fi movie now.
Thankfully, it's in the past, kind of.
Yeah. So for me, going from literally the Olympics to pregnancy to then climbing outdoors feels like maybe it's not the usual transition phase.
Fair. I guess maybe this one will be a bit more relevant than one of the audience questions. How do you deal mentally with things that used to work well, climbing, training, and performance-wise, but now are not, or at least in the past temporarily were not, either because of getting older or having less time because of family or the baby? I have let go of my expectation of my pre-partum self. So I have a lot of postpartum PBs, I call them, like a PB. So I think for me, I've just had to accept my new body and a new way of training. You know, I went from the most intense cycle of my entire life
to growing a human, birthing a human and recovering from that.
Very intense.
And now I have a lot less time. So it's just wildly different. It doesn't feel like I have any expectation lingering anymore from who I was in terms of physicality before I had a baby. But also, I guess because I wasn't just training for bouldering, it doesn't feel as relevant. So because I was training speed climbing and rope climbing and bouldering a little bit, now I can just train bouldering and focus solely on that. And the actual specifics of training for rock climbing are so minimal compared to training for just comp bouldering alone, let alone all 3 disciplines. So yeah, I'd say I've just let go of the expectation that I had before, and I have new goals that are specific to who I am and what I want to achieve now.
Yeah.
And I've allowed myself to shift into this new expectation and be content with that. When I say allowed, I've had a lot of support to help me get to that stage, because it's not been easy, especially because we have 2 boards in our basement, and I have climbs that I could do pre-Frankie.
Sure, yeah.
Well, one of them we reset, which was the best thing we could have done. But the right board we kept has been the same for 13 years, I think. So, you know, I'm like, oh, I used to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Huh. And I've just managed to let go of that. And
Yeah.
resetting the left board was good though.
Okay. Yeah, it seems like letting go of expectations is like a big thing within comps in general. Like I hear a lot of athletes say that they go into a comp with no expectations, and that's when they do.
I don't know if I believe that they mean that though.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I wonder. I feel like I've said that and I've not actually meant it. I've thought that I meant it. Why are you there if you don't have expectations?
Well, along the lines of that, a lot of people say, oh, I'm just here to have fun.
Yeah, but you look at athletes' faces out on the mat and tell me how often you think they're having fun.
Did you ever lie about that?
I don't think I actually said that I was there to have fun. Maybe I did lie about that. If I said that, then I was lying. It's like type 2 fun though, you know? Like in it, you're not really having fun.
Yeah.
Unless it goes well.
Yeah.
And then it's almost, yeah, you know?
People always say it, oh, like I was just there to have fun, and then they won. And it's like, well, did you win because...
Would you have said that if you were like just missed out on finals by slipping up matching the last hole? That wouldn't be so fun, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I do think that people say things because it's almost like the right thing to say, especially like I'm just there to have fun. I question that a lot.
Okay.
Or like I enjoy it. I'm like, do you actually enjoy that? Like I'm not sure how much of being out on the mats and it not going well I enjoyed. Yes, when it was going great and I was like flashing boulders and it feels wonderful. But even that adds a new layer of pressure and I don't know. I think as well, athletes who gain some success, that just piles that pressure on even more. You know, winning my first World Cup was incredible, but it was also like bittersweet because then suddenly it's like, oh, the only way from here is to maintain.
Yeah.
Otherwise it's disappointment. Like when I won my first World Cup and people like flooded in to congratulate me and I got all these messages and flowers and people were super psyched. And then by like, if I came second at the next comp, people were like, oh,
Yeah.
like whatever.
Yeah.
You know, like no one cares anymore. And then winning a few more, suddenly it's only, I guess it's like outdoor climbing. You know, I climbed a V14 the other day and no one cared at all.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, thanks guys. Like
Well, I'm
a few V14s ago, everyone cared.
Yeah.
I got my flowers, but never mind, not anymore.
I'm impressed. Congrats on the V15.
I appreciate that. But yeah, I guess it's relative, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, thanks for the honesty there, because I've always wondered.
Yeah.
So then I guess looking back on your time in the comp circuit, do you miss anything about it or like not miss anything about it? And do you remember anything, or do you like remember any amazing moments where you didn't win?
Yeah, I have so many amazing moments where I didn't win. Because for me, I wanted to go out and give my very best performance. And I genuinely, if someone else did better and so what I would do is I'd walk off the mats and I'd try really hard to analyze whether I was happy with my performance and satisfied. And if I was, then I'd try really hard not to be disappointed if I didn't win the gold medal, which didn't always work. And yeah, there were tears and yeah, it was hard. But that's what I always really tried to do. I never wanted to go out and beat Miho. Like I wasn't there to beat the person. I wouldn't ever have wanted them to fall off for me to get gold. You know, like I wasn't there willing someone to fall. I was like, I want you to give your best performance. Like I want to beat you on your best day. Not you have a bad day so I can win.
Right.
I don't know. That was always where I wanted to be. And some of my like fondest memories of competing with Yanya is she was coming through and super young and this little kid that was like fiery, and you could see she was going to be the best like we've ever seen. You could tell that pretty early on. So to have a couple of years where I could beat her a little bit was quite fun. But it was like very clear it was Yanya's era that was coming, and I was like waiting for it, and we all knew. But there's some really fun memories of competing with her, but also competing alongside Anna Storr, who was a total legend of the sport, who came kind of before me, and I started competing towards the end of her career, and then obviously Akio Noguchi, who competed throughout my entire career. So seeing them win World Cup, seeing my peers, my friends win a deserved victory, probably meant as much to me as my gold medals. I think there was a time where there were 5 of us that would always make every single World Cup final. It was so fun in terms of being there with your friends, and actually fun. You know, you're like, oh, like we're good friends. Being out on the mats, maybe not fun always, because some of the times it would go your way, some of it wouldn't. But that was a really cool experience to live and be an athlete during that time, and to have those relationships and to be part of something that felt really important for the sport's progression. Like we were all pushing each other. And there were 5 of us, and then we'd see like, ooh, who's gonna come into finals this time? Like who's gonna be the number 6? And then to create a space that felt welcoming and bring people in. And I remember really distinctly my first World Cup final, an athlete called Mina Markovic came up to me in ISO and was like, hey, like, welcome to finals. What do you need? Do you know what you're doing? Do you understand what's going to happen? We're all going to go up here and warm up, but then we're going to do this, then they're going to come take us. They'll take us quite early. So make sure that you have everything you need, and like talked me through the whole thing. And I was so nervous. And she just made it feel like a space that was so comfortable. And I wanted to try and give that to athletes that came through into the sport. And I remember Shauna Mackenzie's first World Cup final, and like what it meant to her and to her country for her to be in that final was so cool to be part of. I have a lot of fun memories that are not in fact, I don't remember many of my World Cup wins thinking about it. I remember those moments way more than, I'm trying to actually like pull into my brain a World Cup win. I did one 4-flash final in Munich that was cool.
Finals?
Yeah, I flashed all 4 in finals, and that was cool. But I don't really remember any others.
Okay. I'll have to take a look.
Yeah, and there's like 11 of them.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then, conversely, what do you not miss about competing?
It's funny because there's not a lot that I'm like, oh.
That's good.
Yeah, I don't know. I loved what I did. I found it hard to travel and be away from my other half so much, but also I knew that it was temporary, that my career was, I knew I wanted a baby at some point, and I didn't want to come back to comp climbing after having a baby. I don't miss the politics.
Okay.
Yeah, I really don't miss the...
As an athlete?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So the National Federation politics, I do not miss that. I don't envy athletes having to navigate selection, and I think it's so hard as an athlete to be able to be honest and to have an opinion that you can speak out loud, because we're in the position where some selections are subjective, where you can't kind of, your career is so short, right? You don't want to jeopardize your opportunity to get to perform on the biggest of stages. So yeah, I don't envy athletes navigating the politics at all right now.
Yeah, that's always difficult. And then you also mentioned, again, wanting to have a baby and wanting to do that. So I guess we can kind of transition into that portion.
I'm not trying to bring that up all the time. That's
I mean, it's a very
quite literally the biggest part of my life.
And it's a very important part of your life. And you also like climbed throughout your pregnancy. How did you manage that? Like, was it ever scary for you, especially like kind of being in the public eye and doing it?
It was never scary for me climbing while pregnant. It felt very natural. I always knew I would climb as long as it felt good. I climbed until the day before Frankie was born. I was climbing at 7 p.m. on the Sunday, and she was born at 7 a.m. on the next Monday morning. I was talking about this earlier, actually, because a few of the mums at the clinic I ran were asking me a few questions. I remember climbing on this slab, and I tried to do a cross through with my foot, and I couldn't get my foot through. And I'd done this climb already, and I was like, why can't I get my foot through? So my husband was like, I guess you need to match feet. And I was like, no, I could do this a few days ago. But yeah, it was quite literally Frankie's head in the way. It's like, oh, okay, you were ready to come out. Wow. And I did the sideways dino, and I jumped across, and I was like, whoa, that felt different.
Yeah.
But no, for me, climbing felt super safe and really comfortable because it's something I know so well. It felt safer than walking down the street. And it was, because I was in control, not the other people driving, right? Yeah. The thing that was totally wild was the internet's reaction to me climbing.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, so navigating that was challenging for me and my manager and my whole team. It was very intense, but I don't think that I regret sharing or climbing at all. Like, I think it's really important for people to understand that it's a woman's choice to do what she wants with her body when she's pregnant, and that her risk assessment will be relative to her. The thing I struggled most with wasn't the hate. I know the internet's a negative place at times. I know people write things, and I try my very best to never bite. I think I bit once during my pregnancy. There's one time I replied to a comment, I was like, I just got to
remember.
No, I don't actually. I was trying to remember what that was. I'm sure I could find it. But I had so many people rush into my defense, which was wonderful. But it was mostly the narrative of, she's a professional athlete, back off. She's an Olympian, back off. She's won World Cup medals, like, back off. And I was like, no. Any woman who chooses to climb during her pregnancy, that is okay. It doesn't matter if she's a V3 climber. It doesn't matter if she's a V0 climber or a V14 climber. It doesn't matter. They're choosing to climb while they're pregnant. They're choosing to ride their bike while they're pregnant, or do whatever it is that feels right to them. That is okay. So actually it was the defense narrative that I was trying to help shift, as opposed to the negativity. But I still today get weekly, sometimes daily messages from women who are pregnant or postpartum who were inspired to keep climbing during pregnancy, and often it's not because they didn't feel like they could, it's because they were struggling with the narrative that was surrounding it and the negativity. And I never once had anyone come up to me in person and say anything, and I wish they did, because I would genuinely love to have that conversation. Not to kind of bite at them, just to be super curious as to why they think that's a risk. But wow, I got some really bad comments.
Yeah.
Like, people saying they were going to call they called child services on me, and that I was going to be a bad mom, and I already was, because I was risking my daughter's life, and that I didn't deserve to be a mom because I was doing these risky things. And I was like, wow, your perception of risk is interesting. You think that me climbing a V5 when I'm pregnant is risky, but okay.
Yeah, interesting. Did you, like, go back and forth with your team? Like, they were suggesting that you didn't post about it, or was that?
No, my team and my I don't have a huge team surrounding me in terms of, like, that side of things for the Olympics. I had an amazing team of support physically, but my manager and I would talk a lot about what I was sharing, but I've never been kind of questioned on whether or not to share something. I do all my own social media, and it's kind of my space. And also I knew that I would keep sharing my life, which is what I choose to do on social. And I was pregnant and I was climbing, so I wasn't going to hide it. It was a fun one. Yeah, that's for sure.
I just feel like I would be terrified, because I mean, like, miscarriages are terrible. They can happen for any reason, and like, not be related to, like, your exercise or what you're doing at all. And so I would be terrified that something bad would happen, and then
it would be misconstrued.
Like, oh, of course, that's what happened. Like, you were doing this, this. That would be terrifying for me.
Yeah, I think I always just try to be honest and share my honest kind of appraisal of where I'm at and what I'm doing. And if I were to have a miscarriage, then I would communicate that and I'd choose how much I wanted to share around the narrative of it. But I think for my mental health and my physical health, climbing was far superior to any of the risk it felt of not climbing because of the judgment of it. You know, like I needed to keep climbing if I could.
Yeah.
I was going to stop if I felt like I needed to. I know my body so well. I've been through so many injuries.
Right, true.
I also wasn't falling at the time because I had a knee injury. Not to say you can't fall whilst climbing when pregnant. Some people choose to. I've also had a lot of knee injuries previously where I know for a fact I can climb on a wall without falling. My ability to risk assess is incredibly good after a lot of injuries. So yeah, I think for me it was just where I was at and it was what I was doing. And I'm really glad I was able to climb. I had a great birth. I had a pretty simple recovery. Frankie was born at home in a couple of hours.
Nice.
Yeah, and although it was definitely the hardest and most painful thing I've ever done, I feel really lucky that it went very smoothly. And yeah, who's to say that's because I climbed, but it didn't have a negative impact for me personally.
No,
Every
I'm glad
pregnancy is
that,
different.
I'm glad that went super well. Yeah, that can always be scary. How soon after giving birth did you get back into climbing?
So my women's health physio wanted me to wait 6 weeks because that's the guidance in the UK. I waited 5, which I think is pretty good because I felt like I could climb the day after, to be honest. I felt fine. So I did try to wait 6 weeks, but I made it 5.
Yeah. Did you feel any pressure to heal as quickly as possible because of like the content grind or
No, I didn't actually.
Okay, nice.
I knew I had goals, but first and foremost, my goal was to be the best mum that I could be. I really wanted to breastfeed if I could. I was lucky in that journey and was able to. So I was pretty tired from lack of sleep and breastfeeding in the early days. I also knew I needed knee surgery, so I had double knee surgery at 6 months postpartum.
Okay.
The only pressure I felt to kind of get strong again was because I really wanted to be part of the Red Bull dual ascent experience, and they asked me, I knew I wasn't going to be ready to compete. I was 5 months postpartum, but they asked if I wanted to do the first ascent. So I put pressure on myself to get fit for that, which was really fun and not bad pressure. I love pressure. I love a goal. And when I think about the fact that I climbed that thing at 5 months postpartum, it blows my mind. Like, I do not know how I did that. But it was a fun challenge, and it was rope climbing, so I knew there was no impact because I couldn't take impact on my knees still at that point. And it was just a nice way to try and do a bunch of rope climbing, gain some fitness ahead of having double knee surgery, which, yeah, at 6 months postpartum, I probably wouldn't recommend doing. But I needed it doing so.
Okay, makes sense. Another like audience question kind of related to this. What was the most helpful postpartum training tip or exercise that you did?
My most helpful postpartum training tip would be the breath work that I got from Joy. So really connecting with expanding the rib cage and all the breath work to connect with my body again. Because I think it's really easy to get sucked into core strength training and get into a rhythm of doing stuff, but actually it's taking time to do breath work and really expand our thoracic and like open up here is so useful to allow for like lots of healing to go on and lots of connection to happen. And I feel like the postpartum healing is quite natural. I'd say it wasn't until probably a year that I actually felt like I was starting to make gains again and I was starting to recover. Every month I'd be like, oh, I'm recovered now. I need to start training again to get stronger. And I wouldn't train and then I'd get stronger and I was like, oh, my body is still healing. Okay. So it was probably like a year to 18 months where I felt like, okay, I can start building from here as opposed to just trying to recover my body. But yeah, the breath work was the biggest tip that I didn't think about before pregnancy.
Okay. Helpful information. I feel like I personally have a lot of fear with like pregnancy and like climbing. And so when I grew up, I watched a ton of videos about pregnancy and like giving birth.
No way.
So yeah, this is all very fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, I could do 10 podcasts on pregnancy and giving birth. And I think I didn't have any fear. I wasn't scared about pregnancy. I wasn't scared about climbing while pregnant. I wasn't scared about giving birth. I was super excited about it. As well, like I watched a lot of videos on stuff and I read a lot of birth stories, and I really wanted to have like an unmedicated home birth if I could, which is what I did.
Especially with your epidural experience.
Exactly. There was no way I was having an epidural. No possible way. And I know that I always said I had birth preferences over a birth plan. Right. So I know things don't go to plan. And I honestly really thank my competition days for how kind of structured I could be around how I wanted my birth to look, but also how I was able to adapt with the flow of things not changing and shifting, because that is literally what comp climbing like. Because like you're like, this is the plan. Oh, here's a curveball. Here's go on, here's and it's just a bit like parenting actually. Yeah. Birth's easy, but parenting is a whole different ball game.
Yeah, how do you balance the training and parenting?
I don't know yet. But still bigger now, so it's really fun, but it's definitely a challenge. And I think that there's been a few sweet spots where it's been easier, but now Frankie's getting a little older. She's so inquisitive and intelligent and curious, and I want to embrace that as much as possible. But it means that more and more of my time of training, and less so climbing, she's great at the crag, but training, I need to have my time and space to do that. So I need to protect space and time away so that I can really focus, because otherwise I just end up chatting to her about why I want to use crimps over undercuts, because she's genuinely that curious. And she'll make boulders and she'll be engaged in what I'm doing, which I love, and I want to embrace that, but I need time away to be able to focus on it. So I'm still trying to figure out how that looks, because the past kind of year or so, it's been fine for her to be around, and she's been easily entertained doing drawing or reading, or she stopped taking naps. Actually, that's been the trickiest bit. She stopped taking naps. So yeah, feel like you figure out one thing when you have a kid, and then something else changes. So yeah, that's the thing that's changed right now, is squeezing everything in. Because my husband trains too. Yeah, we'll have a great nanny. She's with us 3 days a week, but I'm like, kind of wish I had a nanny 5 days a week. So maybe we need to find more childcare.
Yeah. Every year brings haste up.
Every year, every day.
Okay.
Every hour.
I think you kind of were getting into this earlier, and the answer is no. But does the thought ever creep in that you should pull like a Jain Kim and return to comp?
No. No way. If I could maybe compete for a different country, I'd be interested. No. Well, because I wouldn't go anywhere near GB climbing ever again because of the politics. I think for my own mental health, is that something you want to get into? I think it's just complicated, and I actually can't really get into the state of where it's at right now, because I genuinely don't know. I've pulled away from that. But it just wasn't a healthy place for me to be as an athlete, in terms of the way it was structured and what was coming. And maybe it's got better. I genuinely don't know. So I can't speak for what it's like now. But yeah, for my own sake, no. I don't know. Every now and then there'll be a team training at the gym. Oh, maybe I'll jump on the boulders and have a try. And sometimes I do, and I'm usually pleasantly surprised. But I'm still just not a fan of the circus dinos. And now they've got slippery too.
Right.
I'm like, no, thank you. I do not need to fling myself across a wall to a slippery volume to eat shit on my face. Like, I don't want to, I've done my time getting whiplash.
Yeah.
Then Tristan, like the no-tex hold. That's what I mean, you know, like when they're like flinging themselves across the wall to like catch a no-tex hold and a toe hook and do a little backflip and land on their face. I'm like, no, I'm good, Albert. I'll talk about it. That's great. It's great. I love watching. It's great entertainment on this side. But no, it was fun at the Olympics to like go down the front, chat through all the beta, as we say here. And I can still read all the boulders, and I spied a few different nuances of maybe you could use this and do that and do this. And the setters sometimes hadn't thought about it, and then the climbers would do it. I was like, yes, I've still got that like edge of what they might do. And again, I feel like that brings so much to commentary of that competition mindset of like where an athlete might go and what they might try. Just from being out there and doing it. And I still feel like I have that connection to the comps, despite it being a while back. But no, I'm doing a board comp next week. Does that go? It'll be my first comp.
Well, I was thinking IFSC comp, but no.
I know, it's a start. In Chattanooga, the expo. Yeah, Mad Rock asked me to do a board comp, so I thought it might be fun.
Okay, good luck there. Maybe it'll spark the excitement and you'll make a return.
No, I think, especially with the sport still being very much a two-discipline sport, or it was when I was coming back to climbing, and we didn't actually know how many medals we had and the uncertainty around that. I think it's difficult for the athletes on the circuit right now to have that uncertainty. Here we're in 2025 and LA is in 28, and we still don't know what athletes are training for. And a 3-year cycle sounds like a long time, but I don't think it is. But yeah, I definitely don't think I could come back to bouldering.
Yeah, I guess it is a little harder, like specifically for bouldering compared to lead climbing to like get back into it.
Yeah, and I'd love to see like a mum climber make it to the Olympics. And you know, Jain Kim was so painfully close. Oh my goodness. Oh, I was devastated for her. She is such a badass and an inspiration. And yeah, it'll be really cool to see Jenya Kazbekova's transition into becoming a mom and see whether she wants to take on LA. Wouldn't it be so cool?
Yeah.
And that's super inspiring to me. But at the same time, for me, I always knew I was going to go rock climbing at some point. I always knew I was going to quit comps. So my goal was to win a World Cup, just one. And I won one. I was like, maybe I could try win the overalls. Yeah. And then I did that. And then I really hurt my shoulder at the last comp of that year. So 2016, I had a huge shoulder injury in the finals. So I couldn't lift my trophy in the air on the podium of the overall. And I was like, oh, this is my goal. And I wanted that picture, like holding the trophy up. So I was like, cool, I'm going to try win it again so that I can hold my trophy up. Because I kind of didn't know what else to do and achieve my goal way quicker than I expected. And then I won it again in 2017. So I was like, oh shit, that kind of happened quicker than I planned. Got my trophy held up in the other. And then the only reason I did the Olympics or tried to qualify was because I knew I wanted to transition to rock climbing at some point, but I also wanted to have a baby if I could. My husband, it was my boyfriend at the time, I guess, was like, you should do the Olympics. You should try qualify. Really? Like, comps are pretty intense. This is hard for us as it is for me to compete. Like, it's a lot of strain in the relationship. It's a lot of support from him. It's demanding for us both. The Olympics is only going to intensify that. And he was like, yeah, but 4 more years, no babies. And I was like, oh, fuck, okay. I was like, if I do the Olympics, then we can have a baby. And it was like, okay, yeah, that's the plan. Like, try to do the Olympics, then have a baby, then rock fine. So, I'm kind of doing exactly what I planned. Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Kind of weird that you didn't want to do the Olympics just because it's the Olympics.
Like, it was a 3-discipline sport. So, I think if it was bouldering, then yeah, I would have been like, oh my God, I want to try and do the Olympics at school. But it didn't feel like anyone could have that enthusiasm behind it, because it was like, who the fuck knows what anyone's going to be at? And I was really thinking, because nobody did it. So, like, no one knew how fast Adam Ondra was in speed.
Yeah.
Like, was he going to qualify? He almost didn't qualify, No one knew who was going to win or how it was going to work. So when it was announced, there was a buzz, but like this kind of disconcerted, confused buzz, like, oh, yay, how's this going to work? Who's going to be where? Like, no one could have called like the men's podium, for example, in Tokyo. And I think it's great that our sport was showcased, but it didn't feel like a pathway you could have chosen. I don't think anyone was confident that they were going to make it to the Olympic Games, maybe other than Rania. Like, she's kind of her own lead. But everyone else, it was like, oh, are we going to make it? And a lot of countries were competing for spots against each other. So there was so much tension there. So when I qualified super early, that was great. But we really didn't think that I was going to be like way up there making a medal performance in 2019. So when I say I wasn't super excited to do the Olympics, it's not because I was like, It was because I was like, oof, like boulder, lead, and speed. Like, I don't know who I am as an athlete across those disciplines. So yeah, it just felt so far-fetched and far removed from who I was at the time. Like, I knew I could win Boulder World Cups and I could keep doing that for a while maybe. But yeah, to transition into a 3-discipline athlete felt just so unknown.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. That's pretty interesting because I feel like as a viewer, I was kind of just like, whoa, I want to see like how fast these like random athletes are doing speed.
Yeah, and that's what it felt. It felt like we were a random athlete here in speed. We weren't speed climbers. Like, some athletes transitioned really well in speed and could do pretty good, but you weren't.
Wait, I thought I heard that you did pretty well in speed because I talked to Tom Greenall. Okay. So like, oh, you did like your bouldering transition really well to speed quickly.
No, I don't think so. Yeah. Oh, I mean, I think maybe he's talking about in Tokyo, Hachioji, at the qualifier. I got super lucky, so I got a really good speed result in final, which helped me get the bronze medal. But my time wasn't good, and I mean, no, I don't think I was very good at speed.
So you probably won't return to kite climbing, unfortunately. So if not that, what are you working towards now? What's your next goal?
Right now, my main goals are just to explore how much I can push myself on rock and where my boundaries lie. I think in the past year I've climbed, 5 V14s. I don't think any of them have taken me more than 2 days.
Wow, okay.
I don't actually think, yeah. So maybe I need to try a little harder. I am not someone who wants to sit under a boulder for a crazy amount of sessions and kind of really push in that kind of style. So I want to train, I want to push myself physically and find something that I find challenging and that feels like the right level. Yeah, and I don't know what that is right now. I have a lot of boulders that I want to do, that I want to finish off. There's climbs that are easier than kind of the top grade that I've climbed in the UK that I want to finish off, like V13s, that are just super hard for me.
Yeah.
You know the style, but I want to do them for the history and the kind of lure. And then there's a couple of routes that I'd be interested in putting some time into too. But yeah, I'm just excited to be a professional climber and go climbing, not have any surgeries. That is my main goal, to have no more surgeries. Okay. I had shoulder surgery last year.
Wow. Yeah.
But I think, it was the year before I had double knee surgery. So I'm just good with surgeries. I'm done with them. Fair. Just going to keep getting stronger and healthier. And then I guess I'm also a woman in my 30s, so I have to decide if I want to have more children or not at some point soon, which is a big question. And I get asked all the time.
Well,
and I don't know is the answer, but I know I have to decide that, and I would like to decide that soon, because it feels like a huge thing to make a decision on, and I'm so torn. But
it's hard.
I don't think I would look to come back to the elite end of bouldering for sure after another baby. So
really,
I wouldn't look to try and do that. I don't think now is what I feel like. Maybe that'll change in the future.
Why is that? Just because like the
because it's so hard.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't think I had a tough time of it in terms of pregnancy, birth recovery. I had a great run. But it was still so hard. And you know what? It's so often like guys that have kids are like, oh, you can have another one. And you bounced back so quick last time. And I'm like, fuck you. I did not bounce back. Like, I grinded away and I pushed so hard and it wasn't easy. And I do try to share that, but obviously not very well. Because a lot of people think like, oh, your comeback was pretty smooth and it was pretty simple. And I'm like, no, I did have a double knee surgery in there, and it's like, oh well, that it was even smoother if you had that too. And I'm like, oh no, it was really difficult, and it takes so much strain and so much support from those around me that I don't think I'd want to do that again. In terms of coming back to the elite end of pushing and climbing hard consistently outdoors, because that's something that I'm really proud of that I can do now, is I can climb hard, and I'm doing a lot of hard climbs outdoors too. But no, I don't know is the answer.
Makes sense.
To all of those questions.
All right. I mean, everyone says they would love to be a parent if they get to be the dad, so.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, that's
Oh,
like.
I love being a mum. Oh my gosh, being a mum is the best ever.
It's all the effort you gotta put
Yeah,
in.
it is so hard. It's exhausting. I have a whole new appreciation for the word tired, and I feel offended when teenagers tell me they're tired because I'm like, oh, you don't know. But I was that teenager, so yeah, I wouldn't change being a mum for the world. I would never, ever wish my life to be different. I adore being a mum. It's the best thing ever, but it's exhausting. And yeah, I loved growing a human and I loved giving birth, even though it was savage. But the bond I have with my daughter and the goals I have around parenting, I feel really, really fortunate to have that. But yeah, it's not easy.
Well, excited to see what the whole future holds for you.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's get into a few of the quick audience questions. We got 3 here. So in regards to Adidas trimming back on their climbing sponsorships, sorry that happened.
No, it's okay.
What are your thoughts on sponsorship and how it differs between climbing niche brands that are well represented in extreme sports, and more mainstream fitness / consumer brands? And do you think women climbers are in a better or worse position than in other sports for sponsorship?
Oh, I feel like that's a lot of questions in one.
It is.
Which one do you want me to answer?
I guess let's do how it differs between like climbing specific brands versus like extreme sports brands.
I think I got a lot of views into how it differs between climbing specific brands and the mainstream world during the Olympics and working with different brands. I think our sport's in a big transition phase as we're coming into the Olympics and brands are becoming more interested. I guess in terms of climbing brands and more extreme sports brands, I'm not too sure who the extreme sports brands are. Maybe Red Bull. I work with Red Bull and have done for a long time. They are by far the most supportive big brand I've worked with. I've had so much support from them in terms of physically and recovery-wise surgeries, and also they build a really great team around you and like an athlete team. Yeah, I absolutely adore working with Red Bull. They do so much for athletes that I genuinely get, like, I want to put my cap on, like I want to represent them because they are such an important brand in helping you build up to get to where you want to be. They really align with you on your goals. And yeah, I'm incredibly proud to be a Red Bull athlete. I think it's really good that they're in climbing and they're pushing into different spheres too. And to have that network and connection of different athletes from different sports is so privileged to be in that like kind of community of athletes. You know, Red Bull UK feels like a real family to me. So yeah, I really love working with them. And then I've worked with a few different brands in the mainstream world, but it's been quite fleeting because that's often the way with the Olympics. You pick up Olympic sponsors and then that transitions and differs. And right now I don't know who I'll look to work with next in terms of apparel, or if I will. I think it feels still quite raw and fresh to be navigating this space of like post Adidas, with the ending being not what I expected. So yeah, I think climbing specific brands are trying to grow a lot at the minute with the way the sport is growing, and I think that it's cool to see a lot of sport for athletes, but it'd be nice to see more.
Yeah. Do you feel like the Adidas thing kind of happened because of, I guess, like the pregnancy and birth and
I don't know. I still don't know the reason why they didn't continue my contract. And it was quite unexpected. I was literally at an athlete camp in November like HQ, where the head of Terex came and sat us down and said how important we are and how lucky we are to be part of the family. So yeah, to find out 2 weeks later that I wasn't going to be part of that family I was lucky to be part of was really not expected. Yeah, it's the most like humiliated and uncomfortable I've ever been made to feel by a brand. And I'm disappointed, but I just really hope that that doesn't happen to future athletes because like Adidas's goal is through sport, they have the power to change lives. So I hope that they do that in a positive way and not a negative way. But for me now, where I am, I think it's just trying to align with brands who understand my values and are aligned with who I am as an athlete. And yeah, it's tricky because I think that being a mum is what people sometimes see first. And I'm a professional athlete too. You know, I'm kind of pushing at the elite end of our sport and doing a lot of first female ascents. Most of the in fact, all of the V14s I've climbed recently are first female ascents.
Oh, nice, yeah.
So I'm like, oh guys, feel like I'm still doing it as a professional athlete, not just a mum professional athlete. And I think that navigating that space is a little tricky sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry for that abrupt end. My gosh.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Well, and I guess also like shout out to Mad Rock for putting together this interview.
Yeah, and Mad Rock have been incredible. They've supported me so much, and working with them is really fun. It feels still new and fresh, but it's been a couple of years now, and I've worked with other brands in the climbing community, the Climbing Hangar, who support me as well. They have been incredible too. And Mad Rock's vision is so innovative and so unique that I feel like I'm still grasping the scope of it, because they are really pushing into so many different areas and what they're doing with shoes and also looking into other areas. I don't know how much I'm allowed to say, so I'm like, oh, can I say things? But it's just been so fun to be here in LA, to hear what they're doing and why they're doing it, and actually to feel a sense of community that they've built here, and to be meeting some of the younger athletes on the team. And yeah, I'm really excited for my future with Mad Rock, and I absolutely adore what they're doing and how they're doing it. I really want to work with brands that I align with and that want to work with me for me, and share the vision that I have. So yeah, I feel lucky to be doing that now.
Yeah, it's very unique. Okay, so next one, how much do you emphasize being well-rounded as a climber now that you aren't competing anymore? So like, would you rather prioritize sending the hardest problems you can in your style, or do you still try to do like...
Oh gosh, that's a great question. Thank you to whoever asked that. And it's something that I actually talk to my husband about a lot, because he wants to climb like the best looking climbs, what he thinks of as cool lines. So it doesn't matter too much on style for him. He's like inspired by the line, which I'm inspired by, but also then as a shorter climber, there's a lot that I can't do.
Yeah.
There's a lot of styles that I know don't suit me. I think I try to train my weaknesses so that I can become a better climber, but ultimately a lot of the hard climbs I've done are crimps on overhangs, because I know I'm good at it. It's kind of my wheelhouse. But then some of them are powerful, and there's climbs that don't suit me that I'm like, okay, I'm going to go try really hard on this, and I want to climb it for this reason. So yes and no.
Okay.
I think I steer towards climbs that make me feel good and that I feel like I can try hard on, but I also really want to climb as much as possible.
Okay.
And I recently did a V13 in the UK that's just this super huge, powerful move on really bad feet. And a guy commented on my Instagram, like, I did not have you down to do the second ascent of this. Like, this is like a burly, like Jim Pope boulder. And I was like, I don't actually know what you mean by this. Like, I don't know whether I should be complimented or offended. And then I thought, actually, me neither. Like, no, I probably wouldn't have gone and tried this if I didn't have some encouragement, because I'd almost written it off as like, that is way too powerful for me. That is such a huge move. It's such a weird box to fit in. But I'm glad I tried it, and it took me a couple of sessions and was really satisfying to do. So
Yeah.
hence why it's yes and no. I do gravitate towards stuff that's in my style, but I'm trying to do more in different styles.
Okay. But still avoiding the no-tex indoor boulders.
Yeah. And today a kid was like, can you show me this comp style dyno? And I was like, no, I don't have to do that shit anymore. I didn't swear at the child. But no, I just don't have to do that anymore. It's great. I'm like, no.
Okay.
I'm not going to show you. I can't do it and I don't want to. But yeah, at the gym, I'll make around an entire circuit. So in the gyms I climb at, all one color will be the same grade. So I'll go around the whole circuit and I'll try and do them all. And I will try and do the dynos as long as I don't feel like I'm going to land on my face.
Okay, makes sense. All right, last question. What is one of your controversial or unpopular climbing opinions?
Ooh, I feel like I should have been prepared for this.
Oh, sorry.
It used to be that I didn't like font, but I do like it now.
Okay.
And that's because I just had so many trips where I sat in the rain.
Yeah.
So people used to think that I was ridiculous for not liking font. But then I went and had like a month of sun there when I was pregnant and I climbed all the easy stuff and it was glorious.
Okay.
Unpopular climbing opinions.
I mean, that's a pretty good one.
Yeah.
Well,
But I did change my mind.
Okay. Yeah. So we need a new one. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like any of my friends would probably pull up like 20 of them because I feel like I have a lot, but they're so normal for me.
Yeah. Well, if you ever think of any.
Yeah, I'll let you know. I'll have a little think about that.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
I feel like I must have quite a lot actually.
Yeah, it's hard to think of in the moment. I was trying to like get at it a couple of days ago, but I think
Do you have any?
anything. Oh, see, that's not fair.
Yes, it is.
That's not fair. I didn't think my answer for this either. I mean, I feel like my most unpopular climbing opinion is just that I love comp climbing. And it's even like
Maybe
popular amongst comp climbers.
what that they don't love comp climbing.
Yeah.
I hate watching climbing. Like I don't watch climbing films. I watch the comps sometimes. Like I do watch the comps a bit. But you know, like climbing films, and I think I got into this a little bit recently. So basically outdoor climbing films I just don't like watching. And I think because when I grew up, it was all white dudes with their tops off screaming. And I was like, why, as like a little 7-year-old kid, would I want to watch that?
Yeah.
And I've been so off put by the world of outdoor, like rock climbing films.
Yeah.
That I'm like, ugh, like no. I do watch the comps when they're at a reasonable hour.
Okay.
But no, rock climbing films, I've just been so off put by all the old school, screamy
Yeah.
dudes
Yeah.
with their tops off.
I guess that is true.
So maybe that's controversial.
Okay.
I just don't like watching climbing.
That's pretty controversial.
Yeah.
I get the outdoor, yeah, like rock climbing. Well, I guess my thing is a little more specific in that I don't really climb outside, so I don't watch outdoor climbing in general.
Yeah, I'm literally a professional rock climber who hates watching rock climbing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, that's a good one. That's a good one to end on. Okay, so that's all the questions I had. Thanks so much for joining me. Any last minute like words of wisdom you want to get out there?
I think my words of wisdom would be that you don't have to define who you are and how you're doing it, you know? There's so many different ways to do things, and right now I'm a professional rock climber. I've just launched a company with my husband. We've just launched Foxy. I sit on the executive board for our international federation. I worked as a trustee on a charity for 10 years, Climbers Against Cancer. I ran the Women's Climbing Symposium for 13 years and founded that event, which has had so many different events that have brought women together across the community. We're about to launch another company with Frankie, our daughter, that is climbing specific, which will be coming soon.
Wow.
And I think that it's easy to get sucked into thinking you have to be one thing, and there are so many different ways to navigate the kind of world today, and you can be whoever it is that you want to be. There are so many options. And I think from when I was younger, I didn't realize that so much.
Okay, awesome. Great word to end on. Anything else you want to shout out or let people know where they can find you? Put links in the description too.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to find me, you'll find me. I'm on Instagram. That's kind of the only place I post. But no, I think for me, there's a lot that I'm getting up to. And I feel like, you know, if you want to figure it out and find me, then you will. But there's not much else to add.
Okay. Well, awesome. Thank you again. It was amazing to talk to you.
Oh, thank you. And it's really cool what you're doing with this. Good work.
Thank you.
And I love the name.
Yeah, that's the main thing. That's like my main claim to fame.
Yeah, I think you have a great name for this podcast because jumping around on slidey volumes.
It's not
real climbing.
you either. Okay.
No.
I'm gonna leave that one in. Thanks.
Thank you so much for making it to the end of the podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Otherwise, you are a super fake climber. If you're listening on a podcasting platform, I'd appreciate if you rate it 5 stars, and you can continue the discussion on the free competition climbing Discord linked in the description. Thanks again for listening.